gentlemen, welcome to the main event.
Let's go.
Round one. Fight.
Thank you for tuning in to the Crypto Street Podcast. Here are your hosts, Killer Whale, Prince, and Crypto Dale.
And remember to tip your waitress.
Hey, everybody. What's up? This is Carlos Matos in New York City. Just kidding. It's only Dale. What's going on, everybody? Thanks for listening, tuning in. Crypto Street Podcast. Like I said, I am a co-host of this. This is Crypto Dale, also known as Digimoney Dale. Killer out in LA. What's shaking?
Hey, a cool 75 today. Southeasterly winds picking up about 20 miles an hour into the afternoon. Clouds coming in from the west. Looking good.
Prince, what do you got for us up in Canada land? You can't just say it's cold. It's been cold yesterday. The people need more.
It's the same old, you know, like the sun is out, but the snow is still on the ground. It's trying to melt, but there's so much snow that it's not. So, and you know, it's probably going to snow some more at the end of the week. So just, just living in paradise here.
The cycle we've been going through here is we'll get the snow completely melted. It'll just start getting, the ground will just start getting dry, and then it dumps on us again.
Yeah, I don't know if we're
and that seems to be the cycle. It's going to be 50 tomorrow. It was 50 today, and then we're supposed to get a foot of snow over the weekend. So
when does it actually start getting warm by you guys?
About May.
Usually about now.
I mean, yeah, usually now it's nicer, but warm, I'd say, in May.
Yeah, here it's like April is it starts to get like 70s again.
Rub it in. Prince, what else is going on?
Nothing, man. I don't have a life. I got the weather and I got crypto. That's about it.
Killer, how about you?
Chilling, dude. I'm going to a Dodger game this weekend. That'll be fun. Otherwise, not a mucho. I've had like a whirlwind couple of weeks with traveling and stuff. So kind of been chilling a little bit past week, which has been nice. You know, it's like you got to kind of recharge the batteries every now and then. For
sure. So tonight's guest is really one of, I would say, you can throw him in as, you know, the quote unquote OG, even though we don't, here at Crypto Street Podcast, we don't really like that term. But he is one of, you know, the early adapters, whatever it is, of this. You can find him on Twitter. It's Nick Pizpie. Did I say that right again? I get so nervous.
Yep, you nailed
Perfect.
it.
So, Nick, thank you very much for taking time. Like I told you when we were talking, I think Prince has got a semi-crush on you. He talks about how awesome you are. So he's pretty ecstatic. So why don't you just start everyone off and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into crypto, just kind of a high-level overview of that for us.
Sure. Well, I'm currently 27. I got into crypto in late 2012. A buddy who ran a platform called Play for Keeps, which is basically like a sports betting platform for esports, originally told me about Bitcoin. And I had a little bit of knowledge about how money worked in the world and knew that was a scam, Ponzi scheme, etc. And Bitcoin, if it were to take off and become something, I figured it could be a big deal in the world. And, you know, it's not every day you get a chance to participate in potentially a new monetary system. So that was pretty enlightening and invigorating. So I just went full steam ahead after I made a couple coins and realized, wow, you can make money on the internet.
That fake internet money can be kind of real, can it? It's funny too with most of the early investors in this, it was either, you know, buying herbal substances online or sports gambling is what it seems.
Or mining
kind of
Dogecoin
funny.
Too.
Mining Dogecoin is the third one. So
Dogecoin was my first big win, thanks to that pump from Wolong back in the day.
Wulong. Well, give us a story. What is the deal with this Wulong guy? I haven't been around to even know about him. I see sometimes talk about Wulong on Twitter, but like I don't think many people actually know what the story is.
He was one of the early big market makers, manipulators like Coolio back in the day, and he had the private group ran on IRC that kind of eventually imploded, but he basically just took low cap market coins and just pumped them up to extreme prices. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of liquidity in the markets. So there was less resistance to move these markets once they had accumulated a substantial position to control it. And then eventually he just cashed out his fortune and his group imploded. And that was the end of that. And he hasn't really been seen since.
He's just lurking in the shadows now.
Yeah, it's possible he's still here under another name. You never know. Once you get the crypto bug, it's hard to get rid of it.
It is very hard to put it down.
So when did you start on Twitter? Like, how did that coincide with your interest in crypto? Like, when did you get on Twitter and start tweeting?
I think I got on Twitter in late 2013. And my main reason for getting on there was just trying to find a community of people, of like-minded individuals, and get information, right? And Twitter was the main medium at the time, and then also the whale pool Google Hangouts, which eventually moved to the TeamSpeak servers. And yeah, just the group of people there kind of all got together on there, shared their information. And since then, it's kind of obviously become the main medium of exchange and communication for a large portion of the community. But yeah, my main reason was just looking for more information like everyone else out there and trying to connect with like-minded, crazy people like myself.
It's insane to think like how much has changed, because that was one of the first reasons I got into Twitter, or crypto Twitter. I'd been using Twitter, on my normal account before that, but I wanted more people to talk with about crypto, or talk to about crypto. And I had like basically nobody in my real life who I could talk with about crypto. So Twitter was a nice sort of, place to go where you can find like-minded individuals, bounce ideas off of people. And now it's just like, this is only probably like a year and a half ago that I started on Twitter, maybe like a year. But it's like now it's overwhelming, and crypto Twitter is this big thing, and it's just actually it's its own ecosystem and community with everything that goes along with it, the scams, the humor, the memes, all that. It's like it kind of puts it in perspective how much this whole thing has changed so quickly.
Yeah, like we've seen a lot of the accounts go from no followers to over 100,000. So it just really shows you how fast this is getting adopted by people. And it's just a big platform for influence for a lot of these guys as well now.
And so many people have parlayed Twitter presences into actual careers, whether it be through representing coins, whether it be through the connections they've made on Twitter and in Telegram groups. And it just goes to show people like, I think we all probably thought we were like too late, like the three of us, me, Dale, and Prince, when we got involved. I think at least to a degree, we thought we were too late. But, if you start out now and you put out good content, then I think you have a chance at getting a following still, because we're still pretty new in this whole crypto thing.
Sure. I still think it's pretty early, even at this point right now. Just we don't have the entire world using cryptocurrency, so I consider it early.
Yeah, and we talked to Howard Marks the other day. He went through the .com bubble also, and we just asked him, compare the crypto bubble to the .com bubble, in stages of where it's at. And he said he thought we were really early in crypto, which, kind of changed my perspective a little bit. I kind of was thinking, in terms of a professional baseball game, I was thinking we were maybe 5th, 6th inning, maybe 7th even yet. But now kind of thinking maybe early 4. I don't know.
I would say early, just getting on the field. Like we're just now being able being able to think about scalability to roll this out to the masses, right? So I think it's still
I love that
early.
answer.
As long as we're below like $1 trillion market cap for total crypto, to me it's tiny.
Yeah.
So
and you really get that perspective too, Prince. When you see the charts and where it compares like us to the equity markets, the housing markets and all that other stuff, and crypto is still so small compared to that.
It's insane, right? Like, and I think the part that really, I don't know, I have like, it bothers me when I see it is when you see everybody, the media trying to say how, this is just the NASDAQ crash all over again. And it's like, I don't think it's a fair assessment at all to be saying that just based on fundamentals alone. It's like, but everyone's going to try to make their own narrative, right?
Right. Well, I think the media has done a pretty good job of getting everything wrong up to this point. So take everything they say with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I think what's the new narrative?
More wrong.
Everything's crashing now just because of ad bans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Somehow that's their new narrative to crash the Bitcoin price. It's like, yeah, okay, I don't know, guys.
That shows you how insightful these guys are into this space.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why people need to be listening.
It's kind of scary to think about at times because, a lot of people who don't know much about it, that's the info they're going off of. I've had guys come up to me and it's like, hey, I saw in the news, like, Bitcoin's like illegal now, and I'm like, what the hell are you listening to? Like, no, but yeah, like the media is just so off on so much. But
that's why I've always said that it's, we do a lot of bickering against the mainstream media on social media and stuff and call them out. But we need to, rather than doing that, we just need to actually engage with them and try and get knowledgeable people on the air, like Andreas, people like that.
Yeah,
so we can actually set the proper narrative and get the real facts out there. I had a guy come up to me today saying that, "Oh, how's your Bitcoin? I hear the NSA is looking into it." It's like, well, there's been a lot of coin analytics companies out there, and we all know Bitcoin is probably the least system to provide anonymity to people and stuff. But yeah, it's interesting to see all the false narratives out there, and it's our job as early adopters and people who are want this to go up in value and people using this thing to put out the proper information. So we can't just sit back. Otherwise, the media does control the narrative. And like you said, millions of people still listen to them, unfortunately. Not everybody as woke as us.
And I've never been part of something that's been so big and that I feel like I'm so early relative to the average person on, which is very interesting for me to see, because it's a funny feeling when you're talking with somebody about something and they're convinced they're right about it and for a fact they are wrong, Like I always talk about this guy at work I have, very smart guy, older fella. But he'll come around every so often when Bitcoin crashes and be like, "Hey, how's the Bitcoin going?" And I'm like, "Oh God, dude, like here we go." And he's like, "The government's going to shut that down any day now, right?" And I'm just like, "Dude, it doesn't really work like that. Like, how are they going to do that?" And he's like, "Well, the algorithms, they have these algorithms." And I'm like, "Bro, you're just like using general algorithms. Like, algorithm could be anything, really." It's like, but it's so funny to see.
Yeah, I was just pointing people to that, even just the Rise on Bitcoin documentary on Netflix, right? It's something that's relatively not crap and provides some basic facts, and it's accessible because pretty much everyone has a Netflix account, right? So it's something people can go home after their 9-to-5 job, sit down and watch it rather than having to, look on the internet, do their own research and all that stuff. A lot of people are just apathetic towards all of that. And they just want to be spoon-fed the content. So Netflix is a great delivery system for that.
Yeah, thanks, Mom and Dad, for that Netflix subscription that I bum off of you. So, Nick, let's start talking about your trading style.
Sure.
You don't have to dive into too many details, but maybe a high-level overview on it.
It's pretty basic.
On what you like, and
I try and trade from like an institutional view. All I do is on my Twitter there, you can see I always talk about order blocks. The large institutions and large traders, they're only putting orders in certain areas. They're not scattering them out from $1 to $12, right? They're either going to be placing the majority of their bids at support or at resistance. There's no point in trading in between that because you're just increasing your potential drawdown and risk in between the zones, right? So all I do is map out the order blocks, and I usually highlight them in those nice blue rectangular boxes. And I just set my ask there. And when you're using limit orders, you're removing the emotion from the game. And I hear a lot of traders, they come into the majority of traders lose money. And the reason why that is because they can't handle their emotions and they don't understand the psychology of trading, right? I argue that's one of the most important things. And I've spent a lot of time looking into like behavioral economics, which basically dives into why, how you feel when you make decisions, like the why behind your actions, right? So if you understand that, you're going to be in a better position to actually execute on your trades because you can have the best analysis, you can have the best news, you can have the, lightning fast internet connection. None of it matters if you can't actually execute on your ideas, right? So my idea is just to stick with where resistance and support is, and that's basically it.
You talk like it's a simple game,
It
I
is,
love that
but
because
most
it
people
is.
can't execute on it. It's just it's amazing to I've heard and seen so many stories over the years. It just boggles my mind. But the commonality in people's failures is always the emotional drawdown, right? People get into if you've had a string of losers, you're going to be, you have a strong bias, and as soon as you have that winner, you're going to want to take that. You're going to want to take that win right away because you don't want to feel the loss again. Right?
Yeah.
So you cut the winners too early and you just let the losers ride because you don't want to feel the emotional loss of realizing that loss. It's not a loss until you close it, right?
Yeah.
But so people just need to have a hard look in the mirror.
Yeah, it's such an important point to bring up because, especially on Twitter, crypto Twitter, you see a lot of accounts, and they're making their own little speculations and they're trading. But the one thing we never see on crypto Twitter, or sometimes we do, but it's very rare, is the whole talk about psychology behind it. And in my opinion, like you said, it is without a doubt to me probably the most important part of trading, because without the right mindset, you're just not going to be profitable at all.
Right.
So.
And the best solution, obviously, is just to automate your trading as much as possible. But unfortunately, not everyone has access to, quants and, really good programmers to automate their strategies. But yeah, removing emotion and any type of emotional-based decision-making from your trading, you're going to see exponential gains and improvements in your own consistency. It took me about 3 years to get consistent. It's not something that you can just pick up and run with, right? It's a lot of discipline.
You have to go against a lot of natural human tendencies, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, fighting that emotion where we see ourselves maybe losing money at the start of a trade, and it's like, oh, chill out, follow the plan. You got your stops, you know where your levels are.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is just sticking to your trade plan. And you know what? A majority of people don't have a trade plan. And that's the first problem. You've already set yourself up for failure.
So when you go into a trade, then, and this is a really good topic to bring up, when you're going into a trade and you're making your own little trade plan, what might you be putting into this little trade plan? What are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking at where I think price is going to go, which is obviously just to the next order block. It doesn't matter what's happening in between blocks, right? If, say, you have an order block at, say, $10,000 for resistance and an order block of $9,000 for support, just put your bids at 9,000 or your asks at 10,000. Ignore everything else in between, because naturally price is going to gravitate to those liquidity zones, right? And the majority, people take positions in anticipation of something. And that's not the right way to go. If you're looking for a signal and looking for confirmation, it means something has already happened to give you that signal, to give you that confirmation. So taking a position before you see that or before you receive a signal, you've just added on to your risk profile, right? Sure, it might go your way, but at that point, you're gambling a lot more. Right. So yeah, just sticking to those zones and, setting your stop losses, and knowing how the market maker is going to move this market. Their goal is to screw retail as much as possible, right? So a lot of people make the mistakes of using their stop losses way too tight. They put them at support. For example, if you buy in the middle of a range, you've now most people will put their stop losses at support or just below it. Well, the market maker they know this stuff and they're going to run those levels, right? So my strategy is I use a little bit of looser in my stop losses, but they don't get triggered as often because a lot of these dumps or pumps. Exactly. They're just running into liquidity zones. So you don't want to be the guy who's consistently getting stopped out at those levels. So it's better just to move them to the next one.
I've definitely been there myself.
For sure. I think we all have.
Yeah. This is something I just saw that you tweeted about pretty recently. Given the current price action on Bitcoin and Ethereum, surprising to see so many different coins in the green. And you have a screenshot of CoinMarketCap. What do you think that says in your mind potentially about the market, given the fact that Bitcoin and Ethereum are ugly, but we do have these alts starting to do some good business?
Yeah, I think there's just some diversions in the market right now. They see the big coins not doing too well and they just want to put their money somewhere. I was looking, obviously everybody looks for, sure, what's the news? Why is this going up, right? But yeah, I think we're seeing that a lot. But I think there's going to be eventually a big break of that correlation. So normally when Bitcoin goes up, it raises all the tide, like all the boats rise, right? All the coins rise with it. But there's no real reason for a lot of these coins to go up. What have they developed since their initial rise? Usually nothing. Do they have more network effect around them? Usually not. Are people using their blockchain? Probably not. But they still rise in value just because Bitcoin has had a rise. I think eventually, maybe in the next few years, that's going to stop, and suddenly Bitcoin's not going to be rising all those tides, and the market's going to become a lot more rational. And we can't have these coins with $5-6 billion market caps and no one using them, right? If we know that the main driver of the value of Bitcoin and all these coins, because they're networks, right? So the value is based on their network effect. And there's multiple network effects with Bitcoin. You got the amount of dollars going through it. You got the amount of users. It's represented in transactions, wallets, etc. And then the main important part of this is the developer network effect, the amount of human intelligence and brain power that are working to solve these large problems like scalability and fungibility and privacy and all that stuff. And we see a lot of these coins, like Ethereum, Cardano, Neo, they're all trying to do the same EOS. They're all trying to do the same thing. But we know for a fact there's a huge pinch on talent and brain power in this space. So how can we have 7 or 10 coins doing the same thing, promising to deliver when there's only one developer to go around to do this, right? So it's really important to know who's actually working on this, to know how many people are working on your project. Because if you just have one guy working on it and competing against a team that's well-funded and has 10 or 12 PhD developers or whatever, they're probably going to get crushed in the long term, right?
So what are your thoughts on Bitcoin's price right now? I've been following your tweets about it, but kind of give the audience just an overview of where you think the price might be going. Talk a little bit about the recent action in Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, obviously, basically the market's been drained of buyers right now. Like we have on the spot market at least. And after that January drop, my affiliate revenue got completely wiped out. So first, that kind of signaled to me that a lot of retail had exited the market and had been or liquidated, right?
Yeah.
And we just haven't really seen a return of the volume. So gravity just kind of takes over at that point. And we see this slow bleed. Like you look at the volume, it's not high. Like every low is decreasing volume.
Even Coinbase too. Like I was looking at the Coinbase volume and from the peak, and then there's just a point where it's like it's dead.
Yeah.
There's just no volume, and it's just like what I looked at this. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, is this a glitch on the chart or something? Like, what happened?
And like it's really advantageous though to the institutional buyers and people using OTC, right? And the real believers in this technology who have the 2 to 5 year outlook in mind, right? They can see the network effects around Bitcoin are really good. We have a solid roadmap moving forward, right? But the retail investors, they're not privy to the information or they don't care to look into it. But this low price is really great for the OTC market, and the volume there has never been higher. So you have this divergence between a dripping in the volume on the retail, but on the OTC side of things, it's looking really good, right? And they're just scooping up these cheap coins. But where I think price could go here, like all I do is look at the horizontal levels. Like clearly, this is coming into that danger zone again around the 7,000 level, and the only level nearby is around 7,400. But if we do break these lows, I'm unfortunately looking around $4,500 to $4,700 again. And if people just looking to enter the market, they're looking at this as a bargain opportunity. But anyone who's been in this space, it sucks to see the price go from 20,000 back down to 4,500. But we've been here for a couple bubble cycles. We've seen this happen, right? But hodler for the long term, hodler for the short term, it's still painful nonetheless.
Yeah. I agree. I think we could have like another painful, like a really painful drop followed by just like a slow bleed for a few months. And I would hate for that to happen, but I think it's maybe the most likely scenario right now. Yeah,
that's what the market's kind of looking like. And unless I think the big reversal point for myself, what I'm looking for is just a return on the volume, right? Like I'm going to continue just to trade the support and resistance levels as I normally would from an intraday perspective. But in terms of recommending Bitcoin to people, it's hard to do that right now until we see like a true reversal and confirmed reversal in the market. And I think the volume is really going to dictate a lot of that right now.
So you mentioned that people who are deep in the space, we feel pretty confident about it being here and being something that's going to be thriving in the next 2 to 3 years, perhaps, if not much longer. Was that kind of your mindset as soon as you heard about Bitcoin? You were like, oh, this is here to stay? Because I was like, I got involved and I was like, hey, this is probably worthless, but like I can make some money off of it.
Yeah.
But then it took probably a good year for me to be like, okay, this stuff is definitely here for real and it has very legitimate use cases.
Well, I always agreed that it had a legitimate use case. It was just a question of if enough people will hear about it. So the hardest part of starting a network effect is that initial spark. Right. But I think we've kind of cemented that at this point. And initially when I came in, I had a 10-year outlook on this. I was only 21 or 22 at the time, but I'd done a little bit of research into the internet bubble and the history of the internet and the development. It took, 30, 40 years in reality, going back to 1976 in the early days, right? Even, from the early 90s, so the dot-com bubble to where the internet really took off in usage, around 2005, 2004. I just used that as a parameter and, 10 years was kind of my outlook and we've been here 6 years now and so far it's looking pretty good. So I have no reason to think that this is just going to disappear anytime soon. I look around and all I see is more and more people getting involved. And I've said it before that Bitcoin would be the next greatest big brain drain, similar to how Wall Street had always drained the smartest people out of Harvard and Yale and all those institutions, right? They all want to go off and seek their fortunes. And now I think cryptocurrency is kind of proving to do that. We've seen a lot of top talent move from, Google, the big banks, Goldman, etc., into cryptocurrency, whether it be on the development side or they're running their own funds or trying to build products such as CBOE futures and potentially ETFs as well.
Yeah, I think we've definitely reached that critical mass for sure in crypto in terms of talent, people from legitimate VC firms, people from really big traditional finance entities that are getting into it, big firms like Goldman setting up trading desks for Bitcoin and crypto. And it's fascinating to watch it actually take shape and kind of morph into this big thing that's going to have staying power.
Yeah, and like you just said, a critical mass, but we haven't hit the critical mass of the users, right? People using cryptocurrency. And that's going to be the real big driver of this. So that's why I think we're still really early. We're only just starting to build out the financial products and build out the infrastructure for a lot of this. It's still very difficult for the majority of people to buy Bitcoin, right? So there's still a long ways to go. And, the regulatory framework is starting to shape up. And what's really interesting about it right now is that there's a divergence now between the governments, what the governments are saying and what the central banks are saying. And particularly the International Bank of Settlements, which basically is like the king echelon of all the central banks. They oversee the policy, etc. The Bitcoin and blockchain are advantageous for governments to use. It cuts costs, provides more transparency, right? And provides a lot of great services that can be built on top of it. But Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are a direct competitor to the central banking model, right? And their revenue stream and their fat cats. So we're seeing really good policies coming out from governments because, governments are supposed to be put out there by the people, or propped up by the people in a democracy, Western-style democracy, right? But the central banks are private companies with private interests that, they don't always align with the people, right? Inflation generally is going against anyone who holds that currency. And I think we're going to see a lot more inflationary events around the world, which are going to maybe get people looking for alternatives, right? Like we only now have we ever had an opportunity to use a different system. Up until now, we've always had to just endure fiat, whether go from financial crisis to financial crisis. There's never been an alternative to go off and use, right? So it's a very interesting time right now. It's going to be very interesting to see in the next financial crisis, which there always is, right? It's just a matter of time, how people react to that.
What are your thoughts here? I see this topic kind of brought up a lot on Twitter, and it's, if there's a big market crash, well, all the money is going to flow into crypto. And then I'll see people get into the argument saying, no, it won't, you're wrong. They don't want to do that. They're just going to try to get the cash. What are your thoughts if we do see, like the equities markets obviously are looking pretty shaky? How do you think that could possibly translate into crypto?
Well, I think crypto is still highly speculative, and the majority of people don't even know about it, right? So to say that there's just going to be this mass exodus of fiat into cryptocurrency, I think is a little, it's definitely a hyperbole. I think crypto would benefit from it, but I don't think it would be a straight moonshot to $1 million. Everyone's pouring in trillions of dollars in the crypto, right? You got to remember, like a lot of this technology is still in beta. Like the lightning nodes are getting DDoSed. People it's the very simple things like this.
Mom and pop are not, their S&P index fund crashes and they don't go, oh my God, I better get this into Bitcoin before I lose more money. It's like, that's the complete opposite of what happens, I think. So I totally agree that I disagree with this notion that, if the market crashes, that's going to be the big thing that drives crypto higher. I think if anything, it might be the opposite, but that's always been a very skeptical thing for me.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin needs to move away from being considered and viewed as a speculative investment to something more stable. And that's what all the traditional finance talking heads always say. The volatility of Bitcoin's too high, blah, 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 right? But they're right. Like for the majority, your average investor, your average, person in life, they don't want to be exposed to 20-30% volatility in a month, right? And that's what the US dollar offers, is just stability for the time being, at least. But not to say that maybe in 5 or 10 years things change. It's difficult to predict things far out in the future, right? But that's just my opinion now, and I still think it's seen widely as just a speculative investment, and it's something with potential. but it hasn't. Again, it's and I think going back onto what we mentioned before, onboarding is still very difficult, right? So how would people move all their trillions of dollars into crypto, right? Are they all going to use Coinbase? Probably not.
This is where hopefully, because there's some news that came out, the CBOE was getting in touch with this SEC, kind of, saying, hey, let's get an ETF pushed forward, let's get a Bitcoin ETF. And so that, the onboarding thing, if we get that, I do think, because the volume has really dried up in a lot of parts. And if we can get that, I think that will open up the gates again, that we can start seeing liquidity come back.
Yeah, I think it, but the ETFs, like again, the majority, your average mom and pop doesn't know what an ETF is. Right. So it's going to provide, it's great. It's another onboarding device. It adds liquidity to the market. But again, it's not an onboarding device for your ma and pa, right? And I think we're not really going to see those until the regulations are a little bit more clear and everything's a bit more set in stone. It's still, one day Korea is banning Bitcoin, the next day it's not. Like, obviously it's FUD news put out by the media, but again, a lot of people read it, a lot of people believe it. Yeah. So, and that's, it doesn't matter if something's real or true or not. If you get enough people to believe something, it becomes true. It's like the value in religion or cryptocurrency or any other institutional idea. It only has value. It only works because the majority of people believe in it. If 10 people exit the fiat system, or all the people in Bitcoin say, hey, fiat's a scam, blah, 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 and they move into cryptocurrency, fiat's still there today. It's still running. However, if we switch the mindsets of a couple billion people, right? Suddenly, you're going to see a dramatic shift. Fiat would go to zero because people would lose the trust in it, right? And that's basically what creates value. It's just the trust in a system and a belief in the system. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's such a good point. Just in terms of like value being like a mental construct.
Exactly,
and that's such a hard idea to get your head around, and especially it's funny you mentioned that most mom and pop don't know what an ETF is, because we're like so deep in this investing game that we're like, an ETF, that's like an older vehicle at this point.
It's a no-brainer.
ETFs themselves are like a new thing, basically, you know. And it's just like it's important to keep that perspective, I think, to get where we are in the market cycle and when maybe the bigger money's coming in. Talk a little bit, I guess, about this story came out recently about Coinbase looking to add, was it an ERC20 team?
ERC20 standards. They want to be able to bring them to their exchanges.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? The implications that might have?
It's interesting because, we've seen a lot of people say from the regulators that ERC20 tokens are all securities. And for the most part, they are, right? But so unless Coinbase is aware of some new regulations that are going to be lightened up around this, or I really don't know. It was like, I don't know what their plan is, because right now with them adding ERC20 tokens, you would think they were just adding securities, and that could bring scrutiny from the regulators, right? But I think the regulators are starting to see that they need to be a little bit more accommodating to this space, because the benefits for the economy are pretty big.
Yeah, there's a whole new industry being created.
Yeah.
Right? And at the end of the day, they don't want to be left behind once it really gets growing. So
yeah, I don't know how they're going to navigate that, because just like you said with the securities issue, I mean, that's still very much a gray area. I think it's still something that's being battled out in the courts. And it's just, that's got to be the big thing that's kept Coinbase from adding a lot of different tokens at this point, I would imagine, is concerns about securities. You saw it with Poloniex and Bitrex, where they just shut down new coin editions. Yeah. Sometime within the past 6 months. I think it was maybe like 5 months ago or so. To see Coinbase do something like that is very interesting. And I wonder if they know something that we're not privy to. I mean, I'm sure they're closer to the issue than a lot of us are.
They've been putting in a lot of work lately with some news releases, about new things they're planning on rolling out. They got the index fund setup coming out too, which that's right. I think that'll be pretty popular amongst certain investors. So Coinbase is kind of playing a game right now, and who knows exactly where this is going to go, because like you guys, I was kind of surprised with the ERC20 news that they plan on.
And I wonder if they're going to add a bunch, or like if they're going to be slow but sure. And
I'm pretty sure they'd be pretty slow and selective after following the debacle with Bitcoin Cash, for example.
Oh yeah, sure.
They're still reeling with those lawsuits, so we'll see how that goes.
Do you have any guesses as to perhaps the next one on Coinbase?
The next addition to Coinbase? I have no idea. They may wait until the resolution of the Bitcoin Cash dust settles down. There's no coins that are out there that really stand out to me right now.
Hopefully, it's one of my bags.
Now, Binance pumps are the new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you aren't a kid in there. Holy shit.
For sure.
Like the way some of those coins have been pumping, it almost makes a guy want to say, hey, do we maybe have an altcoin season approaching?
And like sometimes it just takes one coin really pumping a lot to like get the market going and be like, okay, like this is the alt season.
I think Storm kind of did that with $2 billion volume flowing through it the other day.
That's true. Yeah, that could be
insane.
it.
Nuts.
Yeah. But I think the wider market sentiment right now is pretty depressed. Like, sure, the crypto Twitters are like, alt season, here we come. But, that's 15 guys versus the market. So
and 15 guys who have been saying it for about 15 months.
Exactly. Every month is the new month for it to finally take off. But like I said, until the big horse, the big king in the room, which is Bitcoin, sees some volume and a reversion, I think everything's just going to be a slow bleed, except for the odd pump out of nowhere or something.
And that's like the most excruciating type of market. It's just the slow bleed, At least downward, like violently, is kind of fun and funny, where you can like post like Saving Private Ryan gifs on Twitter and be like, oh my God, head for the hills, like we're getting screwed. It's like, but this slow bleed is just like, ugh.
The slow bleed is where,
it's just so boring.
You get bored, and that's really, I find for myself, it's when I get bored that I start maybe doing stupid trades.
Exactly. People lose a lot of money in slow bleeds. Yeah. Every green candle is the reversal.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So true.
There's going to be some new lessons to be taught here, just about sitting on your hands.
Oh, yeah.
Patient.
It's like you were talking about with setting your buys and sells, at support and resistance earlier. But that's so hard to do. Like, patience is such a tough thing.
Yeah, it's the number one thing I like to teach people. Is just sit there on your hands and do nothing. And your goal of a trader is to remove as much emotion as possible. Be robotic, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd rather be stopped out from a support buy than getting stopped out from buying a resistance or buying in between a range, which is probably the stupidest thing you can do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of maximizing your risk reward, and like these are easy things to say, right? And it's easy to talk about this godlike trading strategies, and I think people really they overcomplicate things. I see a lot of charts from new people, and they got 50 indicators on there. They got 40 trend lines drawn on there. Like, those things are great and everything, but they're cool to look at. But in the reality, it's all about where the orders and liquidity is in the market, right? The market makers don't care about your MACD flip on the 30-minute, right? They don't care about your 15-minute stochastic cross, but they do care about major support and resistance levels, and that's where the market makers are going to play. And I think it's important to know that I had a lot of experience. Well, not a lot, but a lot of my trading. Building up my trading knowledge came from Forex, trading Forex in 2015 when Bitcoin was slow bleeding. So I had that institutional level perspective, and my mentors, they came from Wall Street and things. So I had an advantage there as well. Mm-hmm. But we've seen a transition from the Wall Street market makers and money coming into this market. So you see those exact same patterns coming into the Bitcoin market. So I've had a really good advantage from that experience translating now into cryptocurrency. So I think it's important that people recognize that as a retail trader, you're basically riding the coattails of a market maker. So if you can understand what their strategies are in the market, you're going to have a lot more success in your own personal trading.
I think it's so good that you bring up the importance of the order blocks and liquidity that they represent, because, when somebody is starting trading, they're not looking at that. They're not even thinking about that. They're looking at the MACD. They're looking at their RSI. In reality, it's all about liquidity. It's all about volume zones. And it's quite a simple setup if you think about it. But yet, it takes a while for us to clue into it. I remember, even myself, I didn't really get into using that kind of stuff until I think it was just from following you, Nomad, and Orca. Just because you guys are using it, and it was like, okay, what are these guys doing here? Why do they have these big colorful blocks on their chart?
It's all the same thing, right?
And then, you start playing with it and you're like, wow, this actually works. And this, there is a huge difference here in my trading here.
Yeah. It's just a matter of, again, just sticking with it and having the patience to, not trade in between the ranges. Everyone feels like, I go on Whale Pool TeamSpeak a lot, and everyone feels it's a common issue that they just have to be in a position at all time, because I call it preemptive FOMO. People don't want to miss a move, whatever the move is, right?
Yeah.
They want to be in that. But we need to realize that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, they're markets that trade 24/7, 365. There's always going to be another trade. You don't need to be in every move, right? You're not going to be at the trading desk for every move. You're going to have to sleep, right? And a lot of traders feel that that's the only time the market moves is when you go to sleep. The moment you step away, there's going to be a move, right? So that's you can already tell people they're jittery. They're really emotional about this, even when they're not in a position, right?
It's funny too because there's going to be such a contrast, and you can already tell. It's been very hard for some folks to make the adjustment. I've battled with it myself because we go from this raging bull market where you can be in a position all the time. It's like you didn't have to be disciplined like that. You could be in a position all the time, and you were, generally you were making money. Now the tables have turned. So.
Yeah, you got a Judas on every flip.
Hey Nick, where would if someone listening doesn't know anything about order blocks and stuff like that, where would you point them to get some more knowledge on something like that?
Not the son of a new flow of memberships, but the content that I found really valuable was the content from ICT or Inner Circle Trader. He has a lot of material out there from an institutional perspective, and that's kind of where I learned how order blocks worked and how market makers participate in the market. And a lot of that content is still out there. It's just a matter of typing it in and taking the time to look into it. There's 100+ hours of material that he's put out there around these concepts, right? Where else would be a good one? Just following Nomad on Twitter. He's Crypto Orca, like you said. Just identifying Luke Martin is another good guy. Just identifying quality individuals who have done their research. They've put the work in. They put the hours in, right? Like people need to realize this isn't something nobody likes to hear that. They want to get rich slowly, right? Everybody wants to make that one big trade and they're set for life, but it's just not the reality of how this place works. And if you want to be successful and have a long-term career in this, you need to be thinking about this as a marathon and not a sprint.
It reminds me of something. We were talking with Amanda B. Johnson a few days back, and I think she went through like the initial boom and bust cycle of Bitcoin, and she was saying that, during a bear market, especially a longer one, you really have to do what you can to not get completely wiped out, because it seems very easy during a bull market, just be like, oh, I got money for days. Even if we crash 70%, I'm okay. But your mindset changes really quickly when stuff starts going down consistently. So I think a big part of it is just preservation. Like you said, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, capital preservation is just as important as capital growth, right? My strategy is always capital preservation in a bear market and then redeploy that capital in a bull market, right? And yeah, I think that's something that everyone can take to the bank.
With that, I think it's a good note to end on. Unless you guys have anything else for Nick, I do not.
No, this is really good though.
Learned a lot.
I think.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
good.
I gotta brush up on my
Big
trading.
time, to the listeners, is study up on these order blocks, because I know, as soon as I started looking into it, it made a huge difference. So
yeah, it's just going to become more and more relevant as this market expands and liquidity expands. And, I think the next big thing that we're going to see a shift in the market that we haven't really seen much of is the high frequency trading and algorithmic trading coming into the market, right? So if you thought if you thought the market was sad now, just wait until those things are around, right? You see it in Forex, like during the news events or the data releases. Those things act on every single word, trying to predict what the outcome is, right? So we don't really have a lot of that in crypto. I know for a fact there is one HFT firm that it does participate in the market, but they're not really doing much right now. And you can tell when the institutions are playing around in the markets. Just look at the order books, right? And right now there's not a lot of small orders or a lot of quick movements going on right now. They're kind of just sitting on their hands.
Pretty docile, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of annoying too, because Bitcoin's fundamentally never been more bullish, right? And at a network level, we're clearing 5 cent, 10 cent transactions confirmed in the next block. So from a technical on the network, it's never looked as good as well. We know scalability. It's going to take time, but we got some solutions in the pipe work. We got Lightning Network out there. Again, I still consider that technology in alpha, basically. And there's problems to be worked out. But as we mentioned, we got a lot of smart people coming into the space who are working on these problems. So I don't think they're problems that aren't going to get solved. People know what the solutions are. It's just a matter of testing the technology and getting it out there to the masses. And Bitcoin's going to succeed because not only do we have the top-down movement from institutions who are building products around this technology, but we also have the bottom-up, the grassroots movement of people talking word to word, just mouth to mouth, person to person, right? And I think the honest, it's a strange thing to say, but the meme culture in cryptocurrency has been really good for getting people involved with this. Like comedy is a great way to introduce concepts to people. And I think Ellen DeGeneres did a really good job of using that. Same with John Oliver, right? They may seem like they're making fun of it or something, but again, comedy is just good way to introduce complex.
Simplifies things.
Exactly, it simplifies it for people. Something people can relate to, right? So, and not to mention they have tens and tens of millions of followers. So it's any type of exposure is good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially at that level. So, Nick, thank you very much again for taking time chatting with us. It's been great. I know I've got to go hone up my order book skills after listening to you talk. So order blocks, sorry. So thank you very much for joining us. It was great learning.
Thanks for having me. Good talking.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, and everyone, thanks for listening. Take care. Peace out.